I won't lie, in the wake of the colossal 22-film run from Disney under the Marvel Cinematic Universe banner, I've been burnt out on Marvel as of late. After numerous creatively homogenized ventures, I've been looking forward to a new interpretation entering the ring. Thankfully, Crystal Dynamics has managed to mostly capture the heart and soul of the source material with Marvel's Avengers. Whilst the game's campaign manages to provide an excellent and refreshing depiction of Earth's mightiest heroes, the haphazardly put together multiplayer component and numerous technical failings renders the experience in need of some assembly. Just as the beta implied, the story campaign of Marvel's Avengers is by far its strongest feature. Led by Kamala Khan, the story follows her journey from rambunctious superfan to standing shoulder to shoulder with the Avengers team. Kamala is the heart and soul of both the team and the story as a whole, with the majority of the campaign being dedicated to her growth. Whilst this allows Kamala to gain the development she needs, it sadly results in an overall lack of development for the rest of the cast. Part of the reason for this is due to the campaign's brisk pace. It took me nearly 10 hours to complete the main story, ignoring much of the side content for later. The result is a surprisingly well-paced adventure whose narrative beats come at you rapidly. If you were to view the experience as a focused Kamala Khan adventure, this would certainly suffice. Sandra Saad's performance as Kamala Khan stands right alongside industry veterans like Troy Baker, Nolan North and Laura Bailey, with well-acted dialogue and interactions giving leeway to some of my favourite interpretations of the iconic characters in recent memory. But sadly, the title's ambitions stretch further than Kamala alone. And it doesn't quite meet those aspirations. Whilst Bruce Banner and Tony Stark get the most screen time throughout the story, the rest of the Avengers often feel left by the wayside. Outside of maybe one or two small dialogue exchanges in cutscenes, there's never much substance given to the other cast members' backstory and internal struggles. This also extends to the villains, who at the outset certainly have interesting motivations and agendas at play, until they become muddled in the game's latter half. Even worse, much of the background necessary to explain character motivations are buried under mountains of extra audio logs, forcing the campaign's brisk pace to a halt. Admittedly, the campaign is more good than bad. Whilst the ending definitely leaves room for the obligatory future content that games as a service titles cater for, it still has enough production value to stand as its own product, and easily sets the bar for games as a service narratives in the future. One admittedly disappointing factor is campaign missions not being replayable at launch. Some of my favourite missions, such as Thor's thunderous return to a helicarrier under siege, or the game's bombastic final mission, can't be easily experienced again. This is a shame because whilst the campaign's strictly single-player nature means I still won't be able to enjoy it with friends, the linear path the designers placed me on lends credence to the game's much more cinematic nature. Despite this, outside of the game's tight mission structure, its more cinematic nature often acts as a detriment to the greater experience. Visual features can become more of an annoyance after prolonged play, such as a claustrophobic camera and an obnoxious amount of particle and screen shake effects, tanking the game's frame rate. Characters like the Hulk and Kamala feel almost unplayable at times with their size and wide-reaching attacks taking up most of the screen. In conjunction with this, the sheer volume of enemies in some areas means that camera difficulties can result in a swift death. What makes this even worse is dodging with every character feels too slow, and when paired with the unfairness of ranged enemies and their attacks leaving little window for evasion, your health can be blitzed down to less than half within seconds. Add on to this a barrage of glitches, which range from mildly annoying to near game breaking, as well as a matchmaking system which takes minutes just for one or two members to join, and the fun of it all is significantly dampened. The existence of these problems feels unfortunate, because when the gameplay works, it works. Slamming the ground, dealing incredible damage as Hulk, firing the varied weapon assortment of Iron Man, and dealing huge bouts of lightning damage as Thor are some of the most fun I've had in a superhero game since Marvel's Spider-Man. When you're going against simple grunts with low health pools, heroes feel powerful. When you have to contend with enemies with exorbitant amounts of health, constant stun locking attacks, or criminally small openings for dealing damage, it becomes frustrating more than anything else. Even worse, it's a problem the game's loot system doesn't fix either. Loot in Marvel's Avengers is underwhelming. Gear pieces I found in Hour 1 barely differed from gear pieces I've gotten in Hour 30, Power levels hold little difference, perks feel mostly inconsequential, and the lack of visual distinction between gear pieces means you never feel attached to one the same way you would in a Destiny or Borderlands. In all my time playing, I've never picked up a legendary piece of gear and immediately opened up the gear menu to equip it. The gear system also lacks several necessary quality of life features, such as gear loadouts, and the ability to mass recycle loot. In contrast, leveling up characters, filling out their surprisingly expansive skill trees, and acquiring high-tiered abilities elicits the power fantasy required for this kind of game. Unlocking new moves and passives for each of my heroes is a satisfying progression loop able to carry many hours of post-campaign gameplay. However, leveling up wasn't the only factor compelling me to continue playing. A lot of the drive I've had to keep playing in Marvel's Avengers comes from obtaining new cosmetics for my heroes. Whilst the pool for costumes at launch is limited, what's on offer certainly has me enticed to keep playing. Luckily for players, the game offers numerous ways to earn cosmetics, some friendlier than others. Whether it be grinding a free random drop or grinding large amounts of in-game and real-world currency for the costumes you want, Avengers offers plenty of pathways. One additional way players can grind for cosmetics is with the challenge card, a battle pass system wherein players are rewarded for completing daily and weekly challenges. However, the game only offers 2 challenges of each category, meaning once they're completed, you can't progress any further. Well, that is unless you dig into your piggy bank. It's hard to ignore this game's ardour for paid extras. The marketplace is a prominent centrepiece of the game's main menu, and it isn't shy to show off its shiny costumes, emotes, and nameplates. The one legitimate offence this game commits, however, is its prices, which are far too expensive for a full-priced game. In addition to this, the gating of takedown animations to a paywall feels cheap. Future challenge cards will also have a paid tier, however, they refund the initial price of pass upon completion, meaning they at least offer a fair return on your investment. With all this aside, the costumes in Marvel's Avengers are worth grinding for, and being able to take to the game's Warzone content in sparkling fashion is a highlight. Warzones are the primary multiplayer component in Marvel's Avengers, and are very much akin to the strikes of a game like Destiny. There are numerous variations of these, however, including the quick, bite-sized encounters of drop zones. The game opens up much more in threat and villain sectors, where you and your party are free to roam more open areas, but calling these open world would be a stretch. Just as the larger environment areas feel empty and without life, the interiors of AIM's numerous facilities feel too cramped and packed for heroes capable of flight such as Iron Man. Corridors and layouts being repeated numerous times doesn't help either, meaning you'll be walking through the same hallway again and again and again and again. Repetition is a recurring theme here too, as the game's content and number of missions are sadly underwhelming at launch. With the next content drop occurring later in October, putting up with the same 15 or so missions until then has been tiring. A problem made even worse by a rotating war table selection screen, meaning if the mission you want to play isn't on there, you're out of luck. Despite all of this, however, I'm hopeful for the game's future content drops, featuring heroes ranging from both Hawkeyes to Black Panther and Spider-Man. There's plenty of potential to deliver a satisfying amount of extra content to expand the game's rather lacking content pool, accentuated by its numerous technical problems. These problems aren't the biggest issue with Marvel's Avengers. It isn't the lack of an Avengers-sized budget or a lack of talent and passion, but its lack of direction. The first 10 or so hours on offer, experiencing the game through Kamala Khan's eyes, were easily the best hours I had. However, the overall quality of the package is lit down by a rushed-feeling multiplayer component, as well as a fundamentally flawed loot system which muddies the game's progression as a whole. It's certainly not a game devoid of fun or triumphs, but the abundance of issues, both technical and fundamental, make for an experience that isn't as well assembled as it could have been. That was just one of many great reviews, essays, and previews on our channel. If you like what you just saw, why not consider subscribing and dropping a like on this video.